Can your scoliosis correct itself? In my 25 years of dealing with patients, one common question I always get asked is, can my child continue to grow and the spine and the scoliosis would completely correct itself and become straighter? First, we got to talk a little bit about what scoliosis is. Scoliosis is when there is an abnormal curvature of the spine, meaning we know that the spine should have normal curvatures from the side. These are called healthy curvatures like a lordosis, a kyphosis, and lordosis. An abnormal curvature of the spine is when the spine actually bends from the front, and it has to be greater than 10 degrees, and it has to have a degree of rotation associated with the scoliosis. So the true definition is when there's an A to P or front view curvature of the spine of 10 degrees or greater with rotation. What causes these curves to progress when scoliosis tends to progress is going to be growth over time. As the patient continues to grow in their adolescent stages, from juvenile to adolescent, during this rapid growth, the curves can get bigger, and as these curves get bigger, they can tend to cause more problems. What causes curves to progress as an adult? It's gravity. It's gravity over time. So it's compression of gravity over time will cause these curves to slowly progress over their lifetime. So it's rapid progression because of growth in adolescent and juvenile years, and it's slow progression or gravity progression over time for adults over a long time. So in either of these two phases, can scoliosis ever correct itself? No, it just doesn't correct itself. There's only one scenario that there's been some evidence that scoliosis can straighten itself out, and that's an infantile scoliosis, and that's when they have a curve that's relatively small. As they grow and develop, the curve will tend to go away. Now, I'm not saying the most common, it can. There are studies that say that, but it's unsure in these studies whether the x-ray was taken correctly in the beginning, meaning taking an x-ray of an infant can sometimes be difficult because they bend and they twist, and they always don't lay them completely flat. So was it an improper x-ray and then there was a proper x-ray taken, or vice versa? So we're really unsure, but the best way to reduce scoliosis is definitely to treat it and reduce it. When it comes to traditional treatment, there's this big phase of what I like to call of no treatment. Meaning, if you're diagnosed with a curve that's small, meaning maybe 15 or 20 degrees, they do this watch and wait approach. And because what we don't know is how much your curve will progress during the adolescent stage. Meaning some curves may progress from 15 to only 20 or 15 to only 25. So in the orthopedic mindset or in the traditional mindset, that curve isn't big enough to treat. But is there a benefit to having a smaller curve? Of course, because when you move into the adult stage, gravity will have less effect on a smaller curve than a larger curve. So having a 15-degree curve as an adult will have less impact over your lifetime than having a 25 moving into the adult phase. So the smaller your curve, the better. But since the traditional options have no great approaches to reduce small curves, meaning under 25 degrees, they just say watch it. While you're watching it, you're at risk for this curve progressing while you're growing, or even at risk of progressing during your adult stage with gravity over time. If your curve is greater than 25 degrees and less than 40, and you're still in the growing phase, this is when they will use something called a traditional Boston brace or a Providence brace to try to slow down progression. These are traditional options for bracing, and the goal of these braces is just to slow down progression. They're not really trying to reduce the curve, just trying to slow it down, because once you break the 25-degree number and you're still growing, the likelihood of you progressing drastically increases while you're still growing. In the adult stage, once you break 25 degrees, the chance of it progressing slowly over time also increases because gravity has a greater effect. And then, of course, once you break 40 to 45 degrees, this is when the curves become severe enough where they're willing to do surgery and put rods and screws in your spine and actually try to reduce the curve with this invasive surgical approach, because now the size of the curve warrants this type of risky treatment. But if at 25 degrees they just watch, and at 40 degrees they do surgery, that's only a 15-degree difference. This 15 degrees can be quickly lost in rapid growth and development, and can also be lost during an adult stage as they're slowly progressing over their lifetime. So at 20 years old, they may have a curve that's under surgical size, and at 45, it could be past surgical size, and now they lost all this valuable time that they could have dealt with their scoliosis, so it won't become as severe as what they're looking at right now. So the best approach to try to reduce the scoliosis is not to hope that it'll just go away on its own or self-correct. And the unlikeliness of that happening, again, the only documented options have been in infantile stages, is being proactive and to conservatively reduce the curve, because one thing I always say is that a smaller curve is always better. One thing that's true is that the greater your curve becomes, the bigger it becomes, the more likely it will continue to become bigger. So reducing it, it's always a lower risk for your curve to progressing over time. So being proactive in a conservative approach typically requires a multimodal approach, meaning using multiple therapies, multiple rehabilitations, chiropractic exercises, traction, vibration, neuromuscular education, even corrective bracing to get the best results in reducing a scoliosis. The difficult thing for patients is that when they start looking for all these options, they find one of two answers. One is they say, one of these things never works. Like they say, oh, well, I looked into that, exercise doesn't work. And the reason why exercise alone doesn't work because it doesn't deal with the bones and the ligaments and the neurological systems. And then they say, well, traction doesn't work because it's not dealing with the muscles and the bones and the neuromuscular system. It's only working with the ligaments. And they say, well, bracing doesn't work because bracing is only working with molding the body. It's not working with the muscles and the ligaments. So everyone is missing something. So that's why you need all of the approaches to get the very best reduction in the scoliosis. And then when patients go looking out for all these different options, they have to go to multiple doctors. And when they go to multiple doctors, they're getting multiple approaches. And a lot of times these approaches can work against each other. One thing that we do at Scoliosis Reduction Center is not only do we use these multiple modalities like I mentioned, but one thing is everything is coordinated by one doctor. So therefore everything adds to the next. So it's very comprehensive and cohesive and making sure that everything is complementary to get the very best results. So if you have scoliosis and you're concerned about progression, the very first thing to do is to reach out and to see, number one, do you qualify for a scoliosis reduction program at something like we offer here at Scoliosis Reduction Center? And then two is, if you do, what action steps do you need to do to not let your curve continue to progress? Because the likelihood of your curve self-correcting is almost non-existent unless you're in that small group infantile scoliosis, that there are some of those that have a chance to correct on their own as they grow. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this information helpful. If you'd like to hear about other topics and information on scoliosis, type in the comments below and let us know. And finally, subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified of when we publish content. Thanks.